Okay, welcome everyone to our May 19, 2026 Fire Lake Spring Lake Watershed District Board meeting. And the first item on the agenda here is to call this meeting to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we just concluded on this next item on the agenda is our closed meeting statement. We just had a closed meeting for the purpose of performance evaluation with Emily Dick, and we did reach an agreement to move forward with a position promotion. And with that, that was the conclusion of our meeting. And so with that, we're going to go on to our next item on our agenda, which is public comment. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak to the board on an item that's not on our agenda, come forward at this time, and I'm not seeing anybody wanting to come forward. So we're going to move on to approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions, deletions, corrections from anybody? None from staff? None from the board? I need a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Manager Boyles. Is that you? Yes. Second by Manager Burnett. All in favor of the approval of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, I guess we're going to go to programs and project update from staff.
All right, I'll start with lake levels as usual. Prior Lake is hanging around 902.1, so it's fairly average for this time of year. Historically, we've had a rise through spring to summer. Spring Lake is at 910.74. It's discharging from Spring Lake into Prior Lake at around 10 cubic feet per second, which is on the low side. But good news, there is water moving through our system. For carp management, our water resource technician, Zach Nagel, is continuing to work on the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center project. This is his externship. It's off to a good start. This month, we got 6 new radio tags in on Spring Lake. Stocking was completed this morning, I believe, in partnership with Spring Lake Association. Bluegill stocking is a biocontrol method. It's used to reduce carp recruitment, so bluegills will prey on carp eggs. So these bluegills were stocked upstream of Spring Lake at the desilt pond. And this is the 7th year in a row that we partnered with Spring Lake Association. Around 2,325 bluegill between 2 and 4 inches were stocked here. So this has been a successful program. We're making good progress on carp management within Spring Lake. So shout out and thank you to Spring Lake Association. Over the last 2 months, we've been working on aquatic vegetation management. So our delineations occurred late April, and we conducted DNR permitted treatments on May 7th within Upper Pryor and Spring Lake. The Upper Pryor Lake treatment was aided through a DNR AAS control grant, and the goal of our vegetation management is to limit midsummer curly-leaf pondweed die-off to reduce conditions that favor algal blooms. So eliminating curly-leaf pondweed when it's still out, and the water's still cold, reduces that nutrient availability, where in the midsummer heat, it would allow for greater opportunity for algal growth. These herbicide applications occurred outside of the 150 feet from shore and where projected heavy growth was identified in late April. So these treatments are TMDL implementation plan for both Upper Prior Lake and Spring Lake, again to reduce internal phosphorus load for better water quality. So right now we should be seeing, you might see curly leaf pondweed up to the surface in these locations, but it's going to look like it's dying off, and we'll expect it to probably fall back here in the next week or two. Yeah, Manager Toffanelli.
Did we change the herbicide this year based on results from last year?
Correct. The answer is yes, we did change the herbicide. Last year we were using an herbicide called Diquat, which is a contact herbicide. Through testing conducted with DNR approvals, we're using a herbicide called, it's a flumoxazine or Flumigard, and it is also a contact herbicide. So, there's two reasons the DNR wants to use this new one during years when walleye stocking occurs. So there was concern that it might have impacts on young of year walleye or like fingerlings. And we saw really good treatment last year with the test location. So went ahead, treated all areas to be in compliance and help, try and get better coverage.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I've got several slides here talking about the Upper Prior Lake delisting update. If you recall, we talked about this at the workshop in February of 2025. So I'll be discussing how measurable water quality improvements is going to potentially lead to, good actions and results for the world. In 2002, Upper Prior Lake was delisted, or was listed as impaired on the MPCA, Impaired Waters List, and that was due to excess phosphorus, algal blooms, reduced water clarity, and impacts to recreation and ecosystem. On the right is an image of Upper Prior Lake in, I think that was in 2018. So, the watershed district came up with an approach to planning and implementation. This is a list of studies and plans that the district has, the Board of Managers have approved since 2010. So, the district puts a lot of time into planning efforts to make sure that where we focus our efforts is where it needs to be. Two of the really big guiding documents toward a delisting process are the MPCA TMDLs, which is the total maximum daily load. This was partnered with the Watershed District, along with the implementation plan. And these outline necessary pollution reductions to restore water quality. And a TMDL report has driven various projects, programs, grants, regulations aimed at reducing phosphorus. Now we get into the implementation process. This is the back of a report card from a few years ago, but it really highlights major projects and programs that the district has taken on Upper Prior Lake, including internal loading reductions like cart management as well as external load management, such as Spring Lake alum treatment. So I just have a more or less a collage of pictures of some of the projects and programs that have taken place to help reduce nutrient loading in Upper Prior Lake. So there's a carp seine from several years ago, the 2020 project. This is related to vegetation management as well as rebound and aquatic vegetation has looked like between 2014 and 2024. Our partners have done a huge amount of work related to helping nutrient management, including the City of Prior Lake's street sweeping efforts, which was a huge initiative and began early on in 2012 or 2011. And they put something like 7,000 hours of street sweeping in annually, so which is incredible. Our chloride facility. This is on the bottom here is a pond retrofit at Panama on 13, right by the McDonald's, that the city retrofitted existing features, utilize an iron enhanced sand filter. And there's numerous projects that the Watershed District has completed, such as its permitting, education and outreach, the work that our engineer helps with, including the runoff and rate regulations. There's some more here, but a lot of work has gone into Upper Prior Lake here. That has totaled approximately $8.5 million since 2013, 2012 time. So it's a huge amount of our implementation on towards efforts used to reduce nutrient loading in Upper Prior Lake. So what has that got us? Well, since 2020, we've been meeting our phosphorus goals here for the last 6 years. We've been meeting our clarity, our Secchi disc goal, and we've met the chlorophyll A goal 4 of the 6 years. Big improvements in water quality. And we've seen a continued trend in all of these. They've all been improving significantly. So we, staff, applied for the delisting with the MPCA last year in March 2025. Over the last year, the MPCA has been reviewing these. This morning, we noticed that the delisting has been put on public notice in the 2026 impaired waters list, and that includes Upper Prior Lake. So, that's a huge success. And right now it's in the public notice period, so there's opportunity for partners, residents, and other organizations to comment on that. But right now it's looking good for us. So big kudos to everybody involved, and that's a huge reason that the district is involved in water management.
Sorry. I just wanted to kind of give a shout out for our event coming up on June 2nd. We'll be at the Cleary Lake Pavilion talking about what every boater should know about their wake. So we've been advertising this, giving flyers out at our events, working with the associations to advertise, getting a lot of people signed up through social media, so we started doing paid ads for that too, but tell everyone you know about it. We'd like to see a good turnout. Yeah, that's all. if you can scan the QR code on the flyer, that's the way to sign up. So, all right. Any questions? Oh, also, this is a map of recommended area for boating. All right, on to projects updates. I'm going to start those. Not huge updates on the Spring Lake West Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. We have completed our 60% design, so staff has reviewed that. We've been coordinating with the City of Prior Lake for maintenance access needs for the filter. We'll need to use a vac truck for the kind of pre-treatment area. So they have vac trucks, so we've been working with them to understand what we will need from that. Also working with the county. Eventually there's going to be updates to Marshall Road that this project's off of, so we've been working with them to make sure that this project will work with any future work on that road. And then also work with the landowner. We're gonna have a couple design changes that might impact our easement, that might be in contradiction to our current easement language, so there might be an easement amendment coming up there, but they've all been great to work with so far, so this project's coming along. This project will need grant funding, so we'll hear back from the Bowser Projects and Practices Grant hopefully next month. Hopefully have good news. That's the updates there. Yes, Christian?
Yes, so good luck with it and good luck with the grants. And the dark part of it, is that the first part of the filter, like what the sort of
The shaded
filters
in
it out?
area?
Yep.
So that's kind of that access road that we use for maintaining the pre-treatment area.
And so Spring Lake is up in the corner. The direction towards Spring Lake is up in the corner.
Yeah,
Right.
so in the kind of aerial map photo that you can see the edge of Spring Lake there. So this is off of Marshall Road. And then the actual sand filter is kind of that oblong shaped, macaroni shaped section. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? All right, and then also just some quick updates on the Prior Lake Outlet Channel Segment 1 North Channel Enhancement Project. That's coming up pretty soon. We're hoping to start construction mid-June. There's a fish exclusion period that we'll have to start after. We're still finishing up contracting for that, just a couple more things to get in order, and almost done with permitting, just one more permit that we're from. So that's really close. Hopefully next month we'll have some breaking ground to report. All right, any questions on that? All right.
Okay, moving into recent events. We are currently applying our second dose of our alum treatment on Upper Prior Lake. The first dose was done in 2020. We did obtain permits from both DNR and MPCA to do that work, and the applicator was actually able to start treating a day early, which will hopefully, as long as things continue to go to plan, mean that they will complete the treating tomorrow and be able to demobilize and get out of the boat ramp before the day weekend, which we're very excited about. DNR is appreciative of monitoring. They have constant pH monitoring as well as 4 days throughout the treatment, and those samples are looking good. So we're so far very successful. Have had good interactions at the boat ramp and some comments online too. And in contrast, we have a, oh, yep.
Yeah, that picture, that site looks like a ball field.
Yes.
Are we using that to store?
That is where we are using for temporary parking replacement spaces.
Oh, okay. And that's
Yep.
right by the,
It's just south of the boat ramp, so you actually pass it once you're launch.
Huh.
And this was one of the conditions of the DNR permit. They wanted to make
Okay.
sure that
it looks like a football field, that's what it is.
that precision straightness was me and my back. Thanks. So another alum treatment, but smaller scale. To give you an idea, the treatment on Upper Prior Lake, 143,000 gallons of alum, and this pond we are treating will be 36. So different applicator can do that. They're going to back up a truck and spray 36 gallons in. They'll do that before May, just water temperature wise. And then we'll be monitoring that as well and likely follow up again with a treatment in the fall. So we have dosed accordingly to make sure that we are being conservative. You'll notice that there is a landowner agreement on the consent agenda, and that is just to reflect their continued agreement with the pivot to alum treatment rather than excavation. And we are ready once we sign that because we've received the insurance from the applicator as well. So that could happen tomorrow as well. But we don't have that scheduled yet.
You have a question, Ben? No. You had your hand.
Manager
Quick question.
Lonnie?
Do you see this kind of application, I mean, it's kind of the first one of our, that we've done. Do you see this happening more and more potentially in the district as of other or wetlands or ponds?
I did attend a conference that talked about more alum or internal load treatments on small ponds or wetlands. It depends on how it's interacting, and I think monitoring is really important. So we just have to decide how much resources we want to put towards monitoring to make the right decision on where to do it.
And who did this alum treatment?
This will be PLM. So,
PLM?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Lastly, on the Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. So we finished up the construction of the sand filter seamlessly. I said that this was the smoothest construction ever, and then spring happened, and I shouldn't have said that out loud. And what we found was that in our decompaction of the site, we likely crushed drain tile, which caused this wet, soggy picture you're seeing on the left. Obviously, the landowner happy about that. They still have that land in production and needed to get in and plant it. So we worked with Krieger Excavating to get it out quickly. They dug up, found where it was crunched, put a new connection point, and while they were in there, they found another drain tile that was older. So that the landowner wasn't aware was there either. So always mysteries underground, but the fix has been completed. That drain tile now outlets into our biofiltration basin. And so that water will go through our sand filter and be treated. We've also wrapped up the outreach items that were part of our grant for Bowser. So you'll see a few of them tonight. And that means that I'll close out this project with the last few items and get it online, and then close out the grant as well and get that final payment. Getting close to the end on this. And this will be featured in a tour as part of Watershed Week this year as well. So you'll get to see it hopefully functioning then. In August. Yes. There will be 2 video presentations as part of our mini film fest on agenda 4.6. Yep. Any other questions on projects?
I had one.
Manager Loney?
Reading about the drafting agreement with the City of Prior Lake for consideration of operating, maintaining, and monitoring iron enhanced sand filters. How many sand filters do we have in the city that are we looking at with that agreement?
Right now, it's really focusing on 3 sand filters. So they would help us maintain the swamp filter with some deep tilling, and then we would help monitor Sand Point and Fish Point filters this year.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just any other questions for staff? Anything? Okay. All right. We're going to move ahead then. And we're going to go to the 2025 annual financial audit. Joni Giese and Annie Berg are going to present, and there will be a vote to accept.
Right, so President Loney and managers, first I would like to just give you a quick overview of the documents that were included for your review. So there were actually two documents that were included in this process. The first is the executive governance summary, and then the second is the actual annual financial report. So executive governance summary really kind of summarizes what ABDO was encountering or potentially as they were performing the audit. It is not something that they're actually expressing an audit opinion on, but once again, just kind of sharing observations as they were performing the audit. So if they, as they were doing their audit, if they discovered any potential deficiencies in our internal controls, that would have been noted in this report. Or if they had noted that some of our operations were not consistent with governmental regulations, that would have been noted. They also, share information about were they able to work with staff easily, in performing the audit? Did we have any differences of opinion on what information should be included in the audit? So it's really just kind of a summary of those sort of findings that are included in the executive governance summary. So like a couple of years ago, you may remember that they determined that they had come across a few incidents where invoices were not being paid within the required 30 days. And so, that information is really helpful because that helped inform us of that discovery. We then changed our internal controls and our protocols to prohibit those sort of situations from occurring moving forward. So once again, those are sort of the comments that come through in the executive governance summary. Now, in the actual annual financial report, actually just a summary of what's included already in the report, in the section of the management's discussion and analysis. So the auditors actually provide just limited procedures, and they do not provide an audit opinion on a section of the report called the management discussion and analysis or the required supplementary information. What their opinion is based on is the basic financial statements. And we'll go into that a little bit more here. So the basic financial statements are comprised of governmental-wide financial statements and then fund financial statements, and then notes that supplement both of those financial statements. So the government-wide financial statements takes all of our funds and consolidates them. So our general fund, our implementation fund, the PLOC funds are all consolidated into one kind of broad set of financial statements. And those are also, there's some different kind of audit or reporting requirements. They show all of our short-term and our long-term assets and liabilities. For example, the government-wide statements include all of our capital assets and our associated depreciation of those assets. Now, the fund financials, so those are those break it out into our general fund and our implementation fund, the PLOC operations maintenance, the PLOC emergency fund. And those also focus more not on long-term, but also only showing those sort of assets and liabilities that are going to be brought in or expended in the short period of time around the year end. So if we receive some invoices for 2025 activity that we received in January and February, that activity is brought in and reflected. But if it was like something that we owed long, way out in the future, that would not be shown in the financial statements. So, and they also provide reconciliations of how do you go from one to the other and what are the differences. So audit shows that for you as well. So once again, government-wide, high level, and then you go into more and more detail from the funds and then to the notes. And once again, so the section of, so auditing or generally accepted accounting principles suggest that you also do a management discussion and And once again, those require supplementary information. But once again, they are not audited. But what they do in the management discussion analysis provides just kind of an overview of the financial statements, like what I'm trying to do right now. They provide a comparison of our financial position and activity with our prior year. They share information on our restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned funds for each one of our different funds. They provide more detailed information on what are our capital assets and our depreciation approach. And they also include a write-up that I provide about what were some of the activities that we did in 2025 and what are some of our priorities and planned activities for 2026. The required supplementary information provides more detailed information about our pension plan for para, and it also provides comparisons of 2025 activity to our budgets. Just once again, some additional good information. Both of these help to more fully inform the basic financial statements. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy, who will then share with us the actual findings from the audit. And Andy can also correct me if I said anything incorrect.
No, you did perfect. Learning experience for me. Now I know what it's all about. So. Well, I'm Andy Berg with ABDO. Again, like was mentioned, I'm going to go through the audit presentation. I'm not going to dive into the actual financial statements, but I would be happy to take any questions that any of you have on those statements if you did from reviewing those. So what I will cover today is our results of the audit, so the opinions that Joni was talking about. Look at the government-wide piece, a summary of the entity as a whole. Look at each of your individual funds and look at the comparison also to the that was mentioned. So again, the end results of our audit is that we're issuing an opinion on your financial statements. So our audit report gives that. We issued an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, so the best opinion you can get. We did not issue any audit findings, so a completely clean report. Those findings would have been in that executive governance summary, as was mentioned. As part of the audit, we also issue a report on Minnesota legal compliance. The state auditor has us test 7 different areas there. And again, a clean report there, no non-compliance noted. So really good audit this year. So now we'll jump into some of the financial information. So this is the government-wide piece, a summary there, broken down into your assets, liabilities, and then your net position. So at the end of the year, you had cash and temporary investments of about $4.4 million. Your other assets really are made up of your long-term assets, the bulk of that, at about $2.9 million, so approaching that $3 million mark. Total assets of about $7.4 million. There's also deferred outflows of resources and inflows of resources here. Both of those are related to the pension, so the state pension plan. You have your liabilities broken down between current and long-term. The current is about $700,000, really made up of accounts payable, so those expenses that you paid in January, February that related back to 2025. And then the non-current's really, the bulk of that is your pension liability. And then you get down to the breakdown of the net position. So you have that's broken down to 3 different areas. Your investment in capital assets at about $0.9 million, restricted position at $329,000, and then unrestricted at $3.1 million. So again, that's the watershed district as a whole. Now starting with your general fund, breaking down by the individual funds, how you track the programs and projects. First here with the general fund, we give you a 5-year history on your ending fund balance, which is that orange line, which has remained fairly consistent as a dollar amount and a percentage of your next year's budget. So the yellow line's the budget amount. Your ending fund balance of that budget to really give you an idea of your cash flow with your main resource, your property tax coming in halfway through the year. So you're really sitting at a good level at that 102%, really at that 122 to 102 over the last 4 or 5 years. You wouldn't want that really to go below 50% due to the timing of your property tax revenue coming in. Now, if we look at the comparison during the year, your budget amount compared to actual amounts, really consistent, the actual consistent with budget amounts in both revenues and expenditures. Total revenues at about 288,000, variance of about 8,200, expenditures at 309,000, budget only a $600 variance. He did have some insurance proceeds during of 11,000, so total fund balance decreased about 700, ending at about 310,000. So next is the implementation fund. This is really where the main activity of the programs and projects happen. Here your total revenues, 2.2 million, below budget by about 243,000, with the main variance there in the timing of grants. Your expenditures at about 2.3 million, under budget by about 1.1 million. That variance really is due to the timing of some of the projects of when they occurred year over year. So total revenues under expenditures about 31,000. You did transfer out 93,000 to the other funds, the PLAC funds. So total decrease of about 125,000 compared to the plan of 1.1 million, really related to the timing of the project I mentioned. So total ending fund balance at about 3.1 million in the implementation fund. And then you do have two other funds. So the JPA or the PLAC funds, you have your operations and your emergency fund. Here we give you a comparison of the ending fund balance in both of those funds. Total at about 329,000 at the end of 2025, consistent with 2024. There was some more significant activity in that during the year, so the revenue and expenses were at about 800,000 flowing through those funds during the year. So that's a summary of the audit results. Looked at the district-wide financial information, also broken down by the specific funds. I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Any questions from board members? Looks pretty good, Andy. Looks pretty clean and straightforward.
Yep.
The year in the bank, or so to speak. Yep. I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Frank, did you have a question?
No, but I'd make a motion.
Okay, you can make a motion.
I move we accept the 2025 annual financial report and the 2025 executive governance summary and authorize the district administrator to submit both documents, the annual report to BWSR and to the state auditor statute.
Motion made by Manager Boyles. Motion. Second by Manager Morkenberg. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Not seeing or hearing any. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is going to be 4.3, self-insurance consortium formation. Next phase, participation, and I assume that Joni's going to handle it. Okay.
Yes, President Loney and managers. So at the April workshop, I shared some estimates at that point to try to understand what sort of cost savings we might potentially receive based by moving possibly from the market to the consortium. And I also had shared some preliminary estimates from the consultant who is doing the study for the consortium and provided some estimated renewal rates of about almost 9%. We were out on the market versus an estimate of about 6.67% if we stayed in the consortium. And also, it was my impression at that time that if we unbundled our health from our dental, that we would see some increased costs in our dental premiums, and that the scratched out lines were. So at the end of the workshop in April, the managers asked that I kind of research dental insurance a little bit further to see if that truly was the case, and then to maybe do some predictions of, people are like, well, it's only $2,000. What does that really mean? But try to do some projections. What does this mean in 5 years or 10 years in terms of potential savings on premiums? So after doing my due diligence, I found that really dental insurance premiums by unbundling really won't increase. So for 2027, it would be looking at close to $2,300 in savings in premium costs, which doesn't seem like a whole lot. But when you start to project that out over a period of 10 years, so this used the same percentages of a 9% increase on the market and a 7%, I'll say, for in the consortium, or a difference of 2.3%. And by year over year compounding, this analysis would say that the district would see a savings in premium costs of approximately $1,000. Now, would we actually see a savings of $200,000? No, because this is based on a year over year of 2.3% savings. There's going to be years where the consortium might cost, the same amount as the market, maybe even more but the thought that more than likely the consortium would be saving us, would be less than the market. And I did a few other little scenarios. I did a gazillion scenarios. I won't share all of them with you. But just assuming if it was only a 1% savings over a period of 10 years, that would be reflective of about a $90,000 savings. If we did a 2% savings, alternating, like 1 year it's a 2% savings, next year no savings, and extended that out for 10 years, that still resulted in about $112,000 of savings. So once again, it depends on what is the market, all of that. Maybe it's not a 9% every year. Maybe the market rates start going down to 5% or 6%, and that will ultimately affect this number. But I would say, as a general, I would say that it does seem to point that there would be some sort of savings. Now, that has to be offset with other considerations of additional administrative time to participate in consortium meetings, which would be at least quarterly. We also have, given the fact that we only have 6 employees, and the goal of the consortium is to use weighted voting, it's very likely that we're going to have very minimal influence on decision-making, on some of the decision-making within the consortium, such as selecting who the health insurance carrier would be, who would be the professional services, and possibly some formulary modifications. On the upside, we would have the ability to design our own plan within the consortium. So we still could pretty much have a comparable plan to what we have today. Also, that within the draft, it was either in the bylaws or JPA, or just the overall structure of a consortium would be that the board of the consortium must act in a fiduciary manner. So if you're on the board, you must be voting to benefit all the members of that consortium, not just the members of the entity. So to be on the board, you must serve in a fiduciary capacity. Also, so if we decide, so the decision tonight is whether we want to go into the next phase of the consortium formation. Some of the things that need to be worked out in the next phase is to refine the approach for weighted voting among the members who would be in the consortium. We need to refine some of the governing documents, the bylaws and the powers agreement, and also to solicit and review proposals from the health insurance carriers. And then we still would have one last off-ramp to make a go or no-go to join the consortium. So the latest step in all of this was early this week, or maybe it was Friday, Scott County learned that they thought that the Department of Commerce had the say on whether we could use weighted voting, and they found out no, that the Department of Commerce was not going to be in favor of weighted voting, and that pretty much is a non-starter then for Scott County for being in the consortium. So now the next step would be to go after a legislative change in order to achieve voting. So with this new thing that we just learned, and Scott County had a workshop on this morning, and they affirmed that the Scott County is still interested in moving forward and being a member of the consortium with a start date. Originally, this memo here was all based on that we would have a start date of 1/1/2027. Now it is pushed back a year. They now need to go through the whole legislative process to see if they can get weighted voting, through a legislative process. So this pushes back all the decision-making for one more year at a minimum. But still, the consultants are asking for us to make a vote of whether we are interested in moving in for the next phase at this phase. And it just actually gives us a little more time to work through these last items. So with that, I am recommending that we participate in the next phase. And so staff is recommending a motion to participate in the next phase of the self-insurance consortium formation process. Manager Boyles?
Okay, Manager,
Yeah, both of us.
Manager Boyle, go first.
I concur with the staff wholeheartedly. This is it's exactly the sort of thing that a scale kind of organization should be attempting. It's terribly difficult. What do we have, 30 plus members that we're trying to communicate with and work out very detailed materials? And the savings potential is substantial, but money is one side of it, an important side, but it's also the coverages we can receive, the way we will be treated, which I believe will be differently as an employer, if you will, with maybe 200 or 500. There's no limitation on how many public entities may be part of this. And the savings are taxpayer savings, right? Because they end up paying a portion of our insurance, savings to existing public employees. And as I said, also the potential to have better coverages because we are that larger employer. By gosh, we may even learn some things about insurance that would be very beneficial to us. Finally, this is a potential for a jump-off point. Commissioner Toffanelli earlier talked about something that Scale really should have looked into. And you're probably right. But it's about as complex as this. That's not an excuse. What I'm trying to say is that if we can move forward on this, and this is not the final decision, but if we can move forward on this, perhaps we're more than likely go in the direction you were talking about at our workshop meeting. So I'm, unless you object, I move the recommendation of the staff.
Okay, so there's a motion to move to participate in the next phase. Is there a second? Second? Anyone? Second by Manager Burnett. Okay, so now we can have more discussion. Tofinelli, you have your hand up.
This consortium, help me understand the historical performance of what they've demonstrated so far. I'm not a real fan of consultants projecting over 10 years when they won't be able to tell us what the rates will be next year. So I'm not impressed with projections. What I am wondering, there's a couple things here, and I would like to know, this is a brand new consortium that we're doing here?
That is correct.
So we're already just seeing that something that was going to happen 2027, 28, you kick it in the legislature. Do you have an estimate on how many hours we're going to need to continue on? Let's just take for the rest of 2026.
Manager Tofani, I would say to an estimated hours, I'll say to bring it to the next off-ramp. It probably is going to be, 20 hours of staff time.
Okay, estimates.
And then also, probably also some legal consulting time as well to review the draft bylaws and JPA, just to make sure they are reflecting our best interest.
So 20 hours at $125 an hour is what our cost is going to be. What are you laughing at? What it is? That's what the cost is. We're spending money.
The cost of the consultant.
They're not picking up our cost.
On our staff making $125.
That's where you're wrong, Frank. So, well, you're wrong about that. That's what the cost is to us to go and do that. That's what it is. And so we're proceeding on this like it's a freebie when it's not. I'm seeing savings. It was $578 on the last proposal. Now it's $2,200. It's the loss of control, some of the potential exit obligations. I just think it's not in our best interest at this juncture to be involved in this. That's my opinion, and it's not free.
Any comments from any? I would just have one. Since there's going to be, is there a delay in this whole process because of the weighted option? I mean, could we be moving this whole thing down the road another year and not have to even vote on it tonight?
They would still like us to vote and decide if we want to go to the next phase, for the next, continue the formation process, once again, to refine the JPA, to refine the bylaws, to refine what those weighted voting weights are concurrently while the legislative process is playing out. Now, it could happen that we spend this time and money and ultimately, legislatively, they cannot get the weighted voting approved. And then it's done, because there are a number of the members or potential members who are not interested in this if there is not a voting aspect to it.
Let me ask a follow-up question then. Is there going to be a final go, no-go decision on August 31st, 2026?
No, that is probably in August of 2027, that final go, no-go.
Okay. Manager Tofinelli.
When you look at the age profile of the consortium versus our group, we have a young group, and we're actually to the consortium, not a detriment. And I think we're better off on our own than trying to jump in with Scott County or some of the other members.
Any other,
This is about cooperation in government, an attempt to be more efficient and save money. And is that guaranteed? Is it guaranteed in the private sector? I think not. It's no more guaranteed in the public sector either. So yeah, there's a risk here, but there always is a risk-reward relationship. I think we're closing our eyes if we follow your recommendation.
I didn't realize that us managing our budget, we had to manage the other governments. I thought my responsibility was the budget for the watershed district and not cooperating with other entities, not upsetting them, but not cooperating. I'm focused on our budget only and what's most beneficial in the least amount of tax dollars we require to do our job.
I have a quick question then between these two. I'm kind of split. I like to be cooperative, but I don't want to be wasting money. Do you have to, if we go ahead with this next phase, but they're not really going to do anything more until they get the weighted option, do you have to spend 20 hours in legal fees until when? It seems to me we're interested, but we don't want to spend a whole lot of money to find out it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, that, to me, is that weighted option is not going to pass the legislature.
You know, I think that's precisely why this is taken in steps.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to swallow the whole
Right.
thing when you've only got part of the information.
And I don't think we should be spending 20 hours in legal fees, or can we minimize that?
Managers, I think that try to minimize legal fees, but then once again, we're just, sacrificing our, our protection of our best interests by not providing that input in the process, in the time frame of this next phase. And, once again, I think either we're in or we're out. I mean, if we're going to go into the next phase, we should participate fully in the next phase to make sure that our interests are being reflected in the formation of this consortium. I mean, this isn't ideal. I mean, many of the members would have really liked to have gotten this thing going, effective January 2027. It was really just unfortunate that the Department of Commerce did not provide a timely response so that legislative action could have been taken this year.
Manager Muckerberg.
Yes, so is it possible to sit on the sidelines and see what happens the next year here and still have the option of joining later if we so decide?
We could sit on the sidelines, you are correct, Manager Morkenberg, but our interests would not be reflected in the final documents. We would have no say in what the weighting agreement is, or very minimal.
But will we have any chance of having any say in it?
We could,
Even if we are part of it, given our small number of people?
if I'm understanding correctly, I mean, we can sit at the sidelines and not participate in the development of the bylaws or the JPA or the weighting. We could still put ours in and see where the dollar values shake out for that solicitation of quotes by healthcare providers, and we could say, you know, we could still offer it without putting any effort in, but then we're leaving all the decision-making to others.
Manager Tofinelli.
It didn't sound, based on the population, that we would get much consideration in what you're describing into driving things that would be favorable for our agenda. And I'm just generally against taking an unproven system and saying we'll jump on and hope for the best, when seeing another year delay come in is just reflective of a system that's not set up, and we're going in with plans and thoughts that haven't been proven to be effective. So that's what's got me maybe against the plan. I like the fact on the independent plans we can go for what's best for the staff, and I'm not sure we'll get the same. I know you tell me we can design our own. I really don't know what that means inside of the consortium on that.
So my understanding, Manager Tofinelli, would be like, let's say right now our plan is a high deductible HSA plan, you know, with, you know, what our dollar value deductible is. Let's say it's $2,500, and you know what max out of pocket is, open access, and we could then go into the consortium and get exactly that same plan. And those rates would be based on our demographics of our ages. That's what I've been told. So what we are though doing is sharing risk with, you know, once again, it's self-insurance to a certain level, and then we're basically sharing risk with all the other consortium for those rare, high-cost individuals. In some years, we might be, you know, helping pay partners, and some years they might be helping to pay for us. That's really where it all comes down to.
You're saying there's probably, we're spreading the risk out.
We're spreading
if we
the...
have a big
And pools, we are in a pool today. Even with the policy that we purchased today, we are in a pool.
We're in a pool.
We are in a pool of small employers of less than 10 employees. That's where we get our policy from. Now, if we're in the consortium, the pool is the other municipalities and the other counties within the consortium. If we stay in the market, our pool are just other companies nationwide who are small employers of less than 10 employees.
Nothing over here, nothing? Go ahead. You want to call it? We just call the question? Okay, all right. The only thing I'm kind of a little bit like between Frank and Matt here. I am in the middle. But I remember when you first came out with this, Joni, it was like this consortium wasn't going to meet our needs. It didn't seem like it. And then all of a sudden, now it looks like it was, like Matt says, $675 worth. Now it's $2,200. So it seemed like it's over. I'm okay with you going for one more, going to the next phase, personally. But I'm having skepticism here that the numbers keep floating around, and can we trust them? And is it really in our best interest? So I don't know what we're going to get at the next phase. Hopefully it will be a very, very good analysis of where we're at. But hopefully you don't have to spend more than 10 hours on this. But anyway, okay, I'll call the question. There is a motion to participate in the next phase of the self-insurance consortium. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried 4-1. We'll move to the next phase. And follow-up question is the next phase may not be August 31st.
They're faced, once again, with the most recent revelation, or, finding about the Department of Commerce. The consultants have to put together a new schedule.
It won't be August 31st.
It will not be August of 2026.
Okay. We're going to move on then to item 4.4, Minnesota Watershed Resolution.
All right, President Loney and managers, for the past decade, $10 million annually has been appropriated for invasive species prevention aid pursuant to statute 477A.19. These funds are allocated to counties within the state based on a formula. The number of boat launches and number of boat launch parking spaces within each county. Scott County allocates a portion of their funds that they receive from the state to Prior Lake Spring Watershed District, which we use to offset the cost of our curly leaf pondweed treatment and our boat inspections. In the 2025 legislative session, the state reduced funding to this program by 50%, or going from $10 million annually to $5 million, starting in 2027. The funds that we receive from Scott County comprise 37% of our aquatic vegetation management funding and 50% of our boat inspection funding. So a 50% reduction is a significant hit to the district's funding for AIS prevention. This loss of funding is also going to be detrimental to other agencies who also depend on this funding, such as the county, soil and water conservation districts, and lake associations. Therefore, we have prepared a proposed resolution materials included in the packet that call for a revision of Minnesota Statute 477.19 to preserve AIS prevention aid at $10 million for 2027 and thereafter. It became to our attention that actually the Cornelian Marine St. Croix Watershed District is submitting a resolution to Minnesota watershed districts on this very same topic. So it's not just us. There are other watershed districts who are dependent on this funding. And it is my assumption that the legislative committee for Minnesota watersheds will take our two resolutions and take the best parts of both of our resolutions to come up with one strong resolution to bring forward to the membership for consideration and voting. So, with that, staff recommends a motion to authorize the district administrator to submit the resolution background information and proposed resolution included in the packet to Minnesota watersheds.
Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
So moved by Manager Burnett.
Second.
Second by Manager Boyles. Any discussion on this motion? On the background and resolution to Minnesota watersheds? I'm not seeing any, so all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, we got item 4.5, succession plan and associated budget amendment.
President Loney and managers. The 2026 budget was prepared with the best information available at the time that the budget was created. As part of our staff succession planning efforts, I would like to provide growth opportunities for our existing staff. The table that was included in the board packet shows an approach where staff will take on additional responsibilities handled by the administrator, or new tasks for the district, such as managing County Ditch 13, or internal promotions to a different position within the watershed district. Along with, and the table also shows the proposed timing for some of these staff position transitions. The proposed schedule does include some duration of staff time, which would allow for adequate time for knowledge transfer and to ensure a smooth and providing for a smooth ongoing operations of the district. Within the proposed additional responsibilities would also be associated salary adjustments. So this agenda item requests a budget amendment of $48,200 to cover the estimated increase of salary costs and associated wage-based benefits for 2026. It should be noted that this is a high estimate, as $23,200 is proposed of the proposed increase is to fulfill the community outreach specialist position should a strong candidate become forward this year. Otherwise, the intent would be to not hire this position until 2027. So staff believes that there are adequate funds in the capital project planning budget that can be reallocated to salaries without adversely impacting district operations. And the motion is to approve Resolution 26-415, amending the 2026 budget to reallocate funds from 626 capital project planning to program salaries and benefits in the 509 implementation fund.
Thank you. Staff has presented us with a new, basically, organization chart, the way I would see it. And there are, looks like 4 different positions or titles, different titles. Any question, or anybody, maybe we should have a motion on the table before we vote, or before we discuss?
I'll move it for sake of discussion.
Okay. Motion made by Manager Boyle of Resolution 26-415. Any second?
I'll second.
Second by Manager Toffenelli. Okay, now for discussion. Discussion purposes. Discuss this motion. And where do we want to go with this? Manager, do you have anything, or Manager Toffenelli?
It's unclear to me, County Ditch 13, if this is somehow a consideration in this, and exactly where that might impact any of this, what I'm looking at here.
Manager Toffenelli, that's a very good point. It is the intent that the Water Resources Project Manager would be taking on the role of County Ditch 13, managing County Ditch 13.
Okay, one other question under the field operations coordinator, talk adding permitting and property maintenance. Could you elaborate on what that means exactly to me, please?
Yes, I can help touch on that. So permitting, the intention there is to offload a lot of the detailed tracking that the district administrator is currently doing, just making sure that it's following along on the train adequately. Transition to this role, the day-to-day, although the administrator would have the final oversight. And the other piece that we realized we could streamline efficiency of is property maintenance, and this came to light particularly with the sand filters that we're going to be coming in ownership and maintenance with. So as we have found 4 staff members, each contracting for vegetation maintenance at different sites with the same company, thought we could streamline that to one role and And that's part of the reason for the title change as well, just to better reflect what this role now holds.
Okay, thank you.
Manager Boyles.
Does action on this particular agenda item have a timeline? Is there a deadline? I mean, as soon as possible, I understand.
Correct.
Here's what I'm getting at. I feel like I understand this completely. There's moving parts. They may not be big parts, but they're moving nonetheless. I wondered if maybe it would be worthwhile to conduct a workshop, you guys, to inform us so we better understand and can get behind this. It's a thought. I mean, you got a personnel committee. If these other guys are really not interested in digging into that, we could use the personnel committee.
So, to Manager Boyle, I mean, some of the transitions we were projecting for June 1st, and that would just mean that those transitions would have to be delayed another month. It's not the end of the world. I mean, if that helps with the decision-making, we could have more details.
I would add that the intention with the June 1st start date was to get the financial role transitioned for this budgeting, starting at the budgeting draft. So there was intentionality that, and as well as offloading permitting from Joni's plate as well, so she can get to the items she would like to prioritize working on. I had one other thought. I think when I was drafting this, it was a struggle to figure out how to view information that too detailed, giving you job. So maybe it would be helpful to just run through or ask questions. I'm happy to do that. If it would be more helpful to hear a narrative of kind of how each person's position is shifting, I'd be happy to do that now.
It would for me, but I'm only speaking for myself.
And I was looking at, we just recently approved the personnel policy manual. And looking at the manual, the job descriptions, we don't have them. And we're supposed to, even the board's supposed to be approving compensation according to schedules, which we don't have. So it just seems to me a little bit incomplete yet. I mean, it's like, okay, we're throw some money for future. Are we going to get these job descriptions? Are we, to me, there's 4 different job descriptions changes here. And so anyway, that's just my take, what I'm used to. You get the job descriptions, you have a pay range, or you have what is going to be the adjustment in pay? I mean, what's the new salary range? I don't, some things of that nature. So those are some of my concerns. So anyway, anybody come in? Manager Morkenberg?
Yes, I would agree. I think it would be nice to have just a little bit more time to learn more about it. I think it probably is a good initiative. It's part of a whole new reorganization and rethinking about how to do things, and to, so if it may, it's probably worth it, if possible, to take another month to work on it and say, this is really what we are thinking. Because we just made one big decision today, which is wonderful. And so now, based on that, we can then go on and say, okay, how are things really going to look now? And really put some effort into it. So I personally would appreciate if we could maybe come back to it with a little bit more detail, like you said. And I think it's very exciting. It means you're thinking about, you're thinking about people working with, and who would like to do what, and who's good at what, and how do we do it. So I think overall it's a very good thinking.
Just to give you context, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joni, but my understanding was in the governance manual that the district administrator role of internal promotions and adjustments, and so that's what I was operating from. None of these are meant to reflect totally new positions. For example, The promotion from specialist to project manager, we have that position. The main change is that they'll be overseeing County Ditch 13. So you can look at those job descriptions, but I think there'll be fewer changes than you expect, and that's why I offered to narrate if that's more helpful than this table. For example, administrative assistant, same role but elevated responsibility, so much more in depth with the administrative, financial, and HR pieces. The technician, we already talked about those changes. Water resources coordinator, that is Jeff's role currently, adding people management, and then acknowledging that he has been influential in the feasibility studies. So I don't want to dissuade you, but I don't also want to delay good transition process for positions that you are already familiar with, I guess, would be my 2 cents.
Go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Is there something for the next workshop, if we were to do that next month? I just want to make sure we're not bumping one thing to bump another.
Manager Boyles, there is nothing in the next workshop that is critical.
Okay. We could even, as much as everyone loves it, have an additional workshop. Oh yeah, I'm a hero now. If it meets the board's perspective, I will withdraw my motion if that is satisfactory with the seconder. Who was the seconder?
Matt was the second, but I wanted to add.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. I was just going to say that I kind of agree that I wish there'd be more information, but thinking about it and everything else being said, we have actually discussed this in prior meetings and succession plans, and we kind of already kind of said that this is what we were going to do. Yeah, this is a less formal memo for it, but I think I think the plan was known. I think it's. I guess I'm in favor of just of doing it and voting yes. So, but if we want to wait, then I'm fine to take it. But
Manager Tofinelli.
Emily, I think you confused us and made this more difficult by putting new titles down. And so you took us into what are we doing and what do these mean? So I'll hold that on you, but I agree with I agree with Bev that I don't think talking this through, I think it follows the path we were looking to go through.
So you got the original motion on the table? I believe
yes,
you
we
did.
still have the original motion.
The original motion is still on the table. Okay, Manager Wolkenberg.
Yes, so I would agree with that as well. So if you feel that that's important and the timing of it is important and that we already know what it is, I'm willing to go with, to vote for it as well.
And if it gives you some peace, the salary structure and ranges are held to what we know for those positions. So it's nothing.
That's the detail I think we were missing, a little bit of detail. Sometimes, yeah, we agreed with this, setup. We were all in a concurrence with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the devil's in the details, so.
And that's what I'm trying to say. That it is.
Yeah.
There's no drastic changes. It is it's a tweak.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a motion and a second. So any more discussion on this motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Aye. Uncomfortable now. 4-1 it passed. Can't always be in favor of everything.
Nope. This has been a contentious.
All right, so now we're going to, I guess we go to a mini project film fest, item 4.6. It's just discussion only. No vote on this one.
Yes, I'm going to introduce, this will be a fun way to end our night. So we have been creating some small short stories in the form of film for our projects, and one of them was made by our partner. We had some grant funding that supported this, but recently thank you, Danielle. Recently I went to a conference that had a researcher, Dr. Schorning, present, and she studies science communications. And what she was reporting was that 50% of adults cannot take meaning from written words or literacy. So if you have zoned out during this presentation at looking at words on the screen, you're in at least half of the majority. And then 66% of adults cannot interpret graphs, charts, numbers, meaning out of them. So that's bad news for us scientists. Oh, it's automatically progressing. But the moral of the story was that we are an oral culture. Some people were reflecting like this is a bad symptom of being in YouTube culture and scrolling. But what the presenter was saying is this is actually our roots as human. So you can look at it in that optimistic light too. This is how we've always shared information. So we will show 3 short films. They're all less than 2.5 minutes. And then I'll take your questions after. The first 2 will be focused on the swamp iron enhanced sand filter, and the first one is slightly lower budget, so you might see some differences there, and we also have some different tones, humorous, serious in these films. So enjoy the first.
In the land of 10,000 lakes, 30 miles south of the Twin Cities, lies a body of water, Swamp Lake. As Swamp Lake flows downstream to Spring Lake, phosphorus pollutes our waters and causes algae blooms. The Swamp Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Project is one of the ways we can clean up downstream impaired water. Phosphorus is an essential mineral and chemical element. It is crucial for DNA, RNA, energy production, and bone and teeth health. Phosphorus is vital for life. However, an excess of nutrients in the water can cause harmful algae blooms. So yes, phosphorus can be good, but as we know, everything in moderation is better. Excess phosphorus can come from the runoff of sources such as lawn fertilizer and eroding soil, which then settles at the bottom of lakes, wetlands, and ponds. Before modern manure management, even historical sources like feedlots would contribute. PU! Iron-enhanced sand filters are commonly used modern technology for removing phosphorus from water. No, not that kind of iron. The sand filter directs phosphorus-rich water to sift down through the filter. Tiny flecks of iron mixed in the sand bind with phosphorus, and clean water is returned to the water body. And we all know, cleaner is better.
So that film was done by Winterhouse Studios, and as you see, was supported by the grant. And then the next film was produced by Alex Horner and a few other creatives. Also on Swamp Iron Enhanced Sand. Sorry.
This is Spring Lake, 587 acres of open water, smack dab in a watershed 21 times bigger, flowing southwest to northeast. It teems with life, growing, lurking, observing, fluttering, blossoming, buzzing, diving, blooming. Sometimes a little too much. High algae. This plant-like lake dweller lives on a diet of sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. Add nutrients like phosphorus, and it really gets going. add a lot of phosphorus, and algae blooms out of control. More algae means murkier water, lower oxygen, and a lake that feels a little out of balance. But balance can be restored. To see how, let's follow the water upstream, about 3 miles as the crow flies, to Swamp Lake. Yep, Swamp Lake. More like a wetland, really. Shallow, slow-moving, ultra-rich in phosphorus and other nutrients. Where it flows, phosphorus goes. Until it meets our filtration system. Water coming out of Swamp Lake passes through layers of sand and iron filings, materials that attract and hold into phosphorus. The rest takes its course. Extra nutrients filtered out, less likely to throw things out of balance downstream. One change for the better, carrying over miles. The places we call home. Back to Spring Lake.
So you can see the video quality difference there. And then finally, we have one more film that was created by University of Minnesota Climate Adaptation Partnership, and they were featuring our pipelining project.
If you've ever wondered what a pipe that prevents floods looks like, you're in one now. I'm Emily Dick. I'm the Water Resources Project Manager at Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District. This lake is naturally landlocked, and that means if water ends up here and we continue to get water, it'll rise and rise and rise. There's nowhere for it to go. And what we did was to create a man-made solution, a man-made outlet to the lake, and part of that system is a pipe. Without that pipe, no straw or relief valve to the lake at all. In 2014, we had our last kind of historic flood. We had water raised 6 feet. We had around 60 homes that couldn't get emergency vehicles, 7 public roads closed for weeks. We put a camera down in the pipe every 2 years to just check and make sure everything is functioning as we expect. In 2022, we started to see some results that it was cracking and leaking and reaching the end of its lifespan. We found a technology called cured in place pipelining, and what that does is it takes this little sock-like flexible material and inserts it through the existing pipe. And then once it's held like that, they use steam to cure it in place into something that is rigid and structurally sound like this. And that makes a new pipe that'll last 50 years, so just as long as if we were to dig up and put a whole new one in. What we know about climate change in Minnesota is that it's going to have more frequent, intense rain events that will more often lead to flooding. The ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure is especially true in flooding. It's the most instrumental tool we have to build some resiliency as we see those increased flooding events.
So the last video we saw was shared by the university, and we also reshared and saw a lot of activity on that, and we hope to do the same with other videos, and it'll help us promote our tour in the fall too. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed.
These will become part of websites as well?
Yes, they'll be posted on our website or social media, whatever feels appropriate based on the content. Yeah.
Okay. Multiple, presumably.
Yep.
They are very good. Interesting. So they'll be on our website now?
They are not right now. We were waiting to release the Swamp Iron Enhanced Sand Filter to kind of build some excitement for when it's online and when we have a tour to announce. So we're waiting for those.
Very good. Very interesting. Yeah. When you talked about literacy and attention and people retaining things, yeah, 2.5 minutes is about attention. That's about it. So, good. All right, we're at,
Yeah, I just, also, yeah, I thought they were excellent too, and it's a great way to communicate, and so we can use these already now, but I can easily see other subjects that could be documented the same way, and would be beautiful and exciting, and people would actually see them. And so,
Yeah, that was one of the takeaways from the last Farm-Led Council meeting, as they wanted to see more content like this shared.
thank you.
Christian, you want to give us a treasurer's report now?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and board members. So the report is like many of the general fund expenses are proportionally higher than we year. So it's about a 1/3 through, and that's very typical for our district that expenses are higher here, like the audit that we just had. We have paid that now, won't pay any more on it, and software subscription dues and so on. On the other hand, the implementation fund expenses, they are proportionally lower, and because many of the expenses will come later in the year. When we look at our unrestricted and uncommitted cash balance, it's greater than 50% of 2026 budget, and that's where we want to be, like we also heard the auditor comment today. The district is projecting a large expenditure in June associated with the payment of the Upper Prior Lake alum treatment. And we have planned for that, and this payment will be substantially up by the receipt of our tax remittance half of the year that we will also receive in June. And while the district is projected to have enough cash to cover the budgeted expenditures for the remainder of the year, our cash balance is projected to slightly decrease from now until December, when we will receive the second tax remittance. And that's also a result of our budgeting process, where we chose to use a substantial amount of the money we hadn't spent before in our budget, so we have less reserves. Most of the district's expenditures today, if you looked at the cost analysis sheet, are related to professional services, salaries, and the cost share contribution to the prior outlet channel operations. In the next months, we'll start seeing the other activities, and that's like the laboratory fees, ferric chloride treatment expenses, boat inspections, and other project construction that will come in. Conclusion of my report. Any questions?
Any questions? It looks good to me, but
Yes, we overall in good standing.
yep, we're in good standing yet. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we get our first half of our tax levy next month.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All right, so right now we're going to go to consent agenda, which is one item of business, routine administrative items, or items not requiring discussion. So what's on the consent agenda is meeting minutes from April 21st, 2026 workshop, and meeting minutes April 21st, 2026 board meeting, meeting minutes April 6th, 2026 board special meeting, and then the claims list and bank purchase card expenditures, and finally the 200th Street Palm Allen Treatment landowner agreement. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Manager Morkenberg.
Second.
Manager Tofinelli. There's no discussion on the consent agenda, so all in favor of that, say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Manager Boyles, I would like you to read, there, it's green, read our upcoming meeting schedule.
Would love to do that. First of all, wishing everyone a great Memorial Day weekend coming up.
Yep.
Additional meetings for May and June include a joint board CAC tour and a meeting that's scheduled for Thursday, May 28th, 4 p.m. We'll leave from Jeffers Foundation, and I should, is that in?
If I'm not mistaken with numbers, it's at near 42 and 21st, 21
Okay.
intersection.
So Jeffers Pond area.
Yeah, right there.
Okay, thank you.
And Manager Boyles asked previously if public can attend. We will have some extra seats on the bus, and we'll be advertising registration for those, so.
Okay.
Can we sell the seats? No. Just kidding you a little bit there. Let's see here. Our tour will commence at 4 p.m., leaving it from Jeffers Foundation. Then a meeting at 6 p.m. will commence at the Jeffers Foundation, 3884 Fountain Hills Drive, Northwest, Prior Lake Inn. The board will be meeting in workshop on Tuesday, June 16, 4 p.m. At City Hall here in the Parkview Conference Room, just across the way. And then our regular meeting, of course, will be conducted either Tuesday, June 16, 6 p.m. In these council chambers. I suspect we're going to start having some difficulty, though, as we get closer to the elections, but we'll announce that.
Yep.
So,
We're good for next month, I think. All right, thank you, Manager Boyles. Okay, at this time, we need a motion to adjourn. So moved by Manager Tofinelli, seconded by Manager Burnett. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Motion, or anybody opposed? Nope. Motion carried unanimously, 5-0. Good night, everybody.